I gained 25 pounds because my girlfriend piled her plate at every buffet and made me finish everything she couldn't eat. Last week, I finally stopped being her human garbage disposal. Gemma loved buffets, not because she loved food, but because she loved the idea of having endless options without committing to any of them. Every weekend for the 2 years we dated, she'd insist we go to a buffet. Chinese buffet, Indian buffet, Brazilian steakhouse, hotel brunch spread, didn't matter what kind as long as there was an all-you-can-eat sign on the door. I should have seen the red flags from our very first buffet date. She grabbed 3 plates before I'd even finished loading my first one, piled them high with everything that caught her eye. Shrimp, prime rib, sushi, fried chicken, mashed potatoes, salad, pasta, crab legs, and desserts. By the time she sat down, our table looked like we were feeding a family of 6. Then she took 3 bites from each plate, declared she was full, and pushed everything toward me. I laughed it off that first time, thought she'd just gotten overexcited, but it happened again the next week, and the week after that, and every single week for 2 years straight. The pattern was always the same. Gemma would spend 20 minutes walking around the buffet, loading up plate after plate. She'd arrange everything perfectly, take a few pictures for her social media, eat maybe 10% of what she'd taken, then announce she was stuffed and couldn't possibly eat another bite. Then she'd look at me expectantly and ask if I was going to finish that. At first I said no. I had my own food. I didn't need to eat hers too. But she'd get upset, said it was wasteful to leave food behind, said the buffet would charge us extra for uneaten food, said she felt guilty watching perfectly good meals go to the trash. She made it seem like I was the unreasonable one for not wanting to stuff myself sick every weekend. So I started finishing her plates. I'd eat my food, then eat hers, then sit there feeling like I was going to explode while she scrolled through her phone and complained about how bloated she felt from the little bit she'd eaten. I gained 25 pounds in our first year together. My doctor asked if my eating habits had changed. I didn't know how to explain that my girlfriend was essentially force-feeding me every weekend because she couldn't control herself at a buffet. The worst part was that Gemma never acknowledged what she was doing. In her mind, she wasn't wasting food because I ate it. She wasn't being inconsiderate because she always offered to share. She wasn't causing any problems because the plates ended up empty one way or another. The fact that I was the one emptying them never factored into her thinking. I tried talking to her about it multiple times, asked if she could take smaller portions. She said she liked having variety and didn't want to limit herself. Asked if she could go back for seconds instead of taking everything at once. She said that was inefficient, and she didn't want to keep getting up. Asked if we could maybe eat at regular restaurants sometimes, where portions were controlled. She said buffets were a better value, and she didn't understand why I was complaining when we were getting so much food for the price. She always had an answer. Always had a way to make me feel like I was the one being difficult. Meanwhile, I was buying new pants every few months because nothing fit anymore. The breaking point came last week at a seafood buffet. Gemma loaded up her usual mountain of food. Crab legs, lobster tail, oysters, shrimp cocktail, fried fish, clam chowder, 2 different kinds of pasta. She ate half an oyster and a few shrimp, then pushed everything toward me and said she was saving room for dessert. I looked at the pile of seafood in front of me. Thought about all the meals I'd forced down over the past 2 years. Thought about the weight I'd gained, the stomach aches I'd suffered through, the way I dreaded weekends because I knew what was coming. I said no. Gemma looked confused. Asked what I meant. I said I wasn't going to finish her food. She laughed like I was joking. Said, come on, we couldn't just waste all of it. I said she should have thought about that before taking more than she could eat. Her face changed. She got annoyed and said I was being ridiculous. Said I'd always finished her food before, so why was I making a big deal about it now? I told her I'd always hated finishing her food. I'd just done it because she guilted me into it every single time. I told her I'd gained 25 pounds being her personal garbage disposal. I told her I was tired of eating until I felt sick because she couldn't be bothered to take reasonable portions. She got defensive, said she didn't force me to do anything, said I could have said no at any time, said it wasn't her fault I had no self-control. That last part made me laugh out loud. She was blaming my self-control while sitting in front of 6 plates of food she couldn't finish. The staff came to clear our table. They looked at all the uneaten food, and one of them mentioned that excessive waste could result in an additional charge. Gemma immediately pointed at me and said he usually finishes everything, but he's being difficult today. The server looked at me. I shrugged and said I wasn't hungry. They charged us for the wasted food. $32 on top of the regular buffet price. Gemma paid without saying a word, but her face was red the whole drive home. She dropped me off at my apartment and drove away before I could even close the passenger door all the way. I went inside and sat on my couch staring at the wall. My stomach hurt from the food I had eaten, not from the food I hadn't. For the first time in 2 years, that pain felt like victory instead of punishment. My phone buzzed around 10 that night. I picked it up and saw 3 texts from Gemma. The first one asked what I wanted to do next weekend. The second one suggested a new Brazilian place that just opened. The third one included a link to their menu with a note about their all-you-can-eat option. I read them twice, then 3 times, waiting for some acknowledgement of what happened at dinner. Some mention of our argument or the extra charge or anything that showed she understood why I was upset. Nothing. She was acting like the whole thing never happened. Like I hadn't told her I gained 25 pounds finishing her food. Like I hadn't refused to eat her leftovers for the first time ever. Like the staff hadn't charged us extra because of her waste. She genuinely thought we were just going to keep going to Buffett's every weekend like I never said anything. The audacity of it made me laugh. But it wasn't a happy laugh. It was the kind of laugh that comes out when you realize something, so ridiculous that you can't believe you didn't see it before. I put my phone face down on the coffee table and went to bed without responding. I woke up the next morning to 6 more messages. The first one asked if I was okay. The second one said she was worried because I usually respond right away. The third one asked if I was mad at her. The fourth one said she didn't understand why I was giving her the silent treatment. The fifth one said I was being immature. The sixth one said she couldn't believe I was making such a big deal out of nothing. I sat there in bed, reading through them all, watching her cycle through confusion and concern and annoyance and blame without ever once acknowledging what she did wrong. She made it about me not responding instead of about her behavior that made me not want to respond. I typed out a reply 3 different times and deleted it each time. Finally, I just wrote that we needed to talk about our relationship, not just the buffet thing. She responded immediately asking what that meant. I told her we should meet somewhere neutral and talk in person. She sent back a question mark. I didn't answer. We met at a coffee shop 2 days later. I got there early and picked a table in the back corner where we could talk without the whole place hearing us. Gemma showed up 15 minutes late wearing the dress I told her I liked and carrying a gift bag. She sat down across from me and slid the bag over with a smile. I looked inside and saw a bag of my favorite candy and a card. She told me she felt bad about our fight and wanted to make it up to me. I pushed the bag back toward her and said we needed to talk about the pattern. Her smile faded. She asked what pattern. I said the pattern of her taking more food than she could eat and then guilting me into finishing it. The pattern of her making me responsible for her choices. The pattern of her never acknowledging that her behavior affected me. She sighed and leaned back in her chair. She said she thought we were past this drama. I told her it wasn't drama, it was a real problem that had been going on for 2 years. She tried the same deflection tactics she always used. Said I was making a big deal out of nothing. Said couples share food all the time. Said she didn't understand why I was suddenly so upset about something that had never been a problem before. I pointed out that sharing means both people want to, not one person forcing the other through guilt trips. She got teary and said she couldn't believe I was attacking her over trying to prevent food waste. I stayed calm and said she wasn't preventing food waste, she was just moving the waste from the restaurant trash to my stomach. She said that was a horrible thing to say. I said it was true. She stood up and said she needed to use the bathroom. I watched her walk away and wondered if she was actually going to come back or if she was leaving. She came back 5 minutes later with red eyes and sat down without looking at me. She said maybe we should just forget the whole thing and start fresh. I said I didn't want to start fresh. I wanted her to acknowledge what she'd been doing. She said fine, she acknowledged it. Could we move on now? I told her that wasn't actually acknowledging it. My college buddy met me for drinks that weekend at a bar near campus. I hadn't seen him in a month because Gemma always found reasons why we shouldn't hang out with my friends. He took one look at me and said I looked different. I asked what he meant. He said he couldn't put his finger on it, like I'd lost weight or something. I told him about the buffet situation and how I finally stood up to Gemma. He just stared at me for a long moment. Then he said he'd been watching this happen for 2 years and wondering when I'd notice. His bluntness hit hard because he was right. I asked him what he meant by watching it happen. He said every time we all went out together, Gemma would order for me or comment on what I was eating or make me split something she wanted even when I said I wasn't hungry. He said he and our other friends talked about it sometimes, about how different I was around her. I felt embarrassed and defensive at the same time. I asked why nobody said anything. He said they tried a few times, but I always made excuses for her. He ordered another round and asked what I was going to do now. I said I didn't know. Gemma called a few days later with a new approach. She said she'd been thinking about everything I said, and maybe we could compromise by going to buffets less often. Maybe every other week instead of every week. I realized while she was talking that she still wasn't getting it. The problem wasn't the frequency. The problem was the entire dynamic of her taking food she wouldn't eat and expecting me to finish it. When I explained this, she got frustrated. She said she was trying to meet me halfway and I was being impossible to please. I said meeting me halfway would be her taking only what she could actually eat. She said that wasn't realistic because how was she supposed to know what she'd want before she tried it? I said she could take small portions first and go back for more if she wanted. She said that defeated the purpose of a buffet. I asked what the purpose was then. She said to have options and variety. I said it seemed like the purpose was to take as much as possible regardless of whether she'd eat it. She hung up on me. I started noticing other controlling patterns I'd missed before. How she always picked where we went for dinner. How she dismissed my restaurant suggestions by saying they didn't sound good or were too expensive or too far away. How she pouted if I ordered something she didn't think I should eat. Last Tuesday, we went to a regular restaurant and I ordered a salad. She got annoyed and asked why I was being weird about food now. I said I wasn't being weird, I just wanted a salad. She said I never order salads. I pointed out that she never let me order what I wanted because she always had an opinion about it. She said she was just trying to help me make good choices. I asked who decided what good choices were. She said she did because she knew more about nutrition than I did. The irony was incredible. This was the same person who piled 6 plates high at buffets and ate 3 bites from each one. But somehow she was the expert on good choices. 3 weeks after the seafood buffet incident, I texted Gemma and said we needed to talk about more than just food. She called me immediately. I told her I was seeing a pattern of her dismissing what I wanted and needed. She got defensive right away. She said she couldn't believe I was suddenly acting like she was some terrible person when she'd been a great girlfriend for 2 years. I stayed calm and started listing specific examples. How she always chose our weekend plans without asking what I wanted to do. How she got upset when I made plans with friends without checking with her first. How she criticized my clothes and my apartment and my job. How she made me feel guilty for having preferences that were different from hers. She interrupted me and said those weren't examples of controlling behavior. That was just normal relationship stuff. I said it wasn't normal for one person to make all the decisions and the other person to just go along with it. She said I could have spoken up any time. I said I did speak up and she always found a way to make me feel bad about it until I backed down. Gemma broke down crying. She said she had issues with control stemming from her childhood. Her parents controlled everything she ate when she was growing up. They made her finish everything on her plate even when she was full. They decided what she could order at restaurants. They criticized her weight and her food choices constantly. She said it messed her up and that's why she had such a complicated relationship with food now. For a moment I felt bad and wanted to comfort her. This was the most vulnerable she'd ever been with me. Then she pivoted to saying that's why she needed me to be understanding and supportive instead of criticizing her. She said I should be helping her work through her issues, not making them worse by refusing to finish her food. I realized she was using vulnerability as another manipulation tactic. She was turning her childhood trauma into a reason why I should keep enabling her behavior. I told her I was sorry about what her parents did, but that didn't make it okay for her to control what I ate. She stopped crying immediately and said I was being cruel. I made an appointment with a therapist the next day. I needed to talk to someone objective about whether I was overreacting or if this relationship was actually as unhealthy as it was starting to feel. The therapist was a woman in her 50s with a kind face and a calm voice. She let me talk for 30 minutes straight about Gemma and the buffets and the controlling behavior and all of it. When I finished, she asked me one question. She asked how I felt after spending time with Gemma. I thought about it for a minute. Then I said exhausted and guilty. Exhausted because every interaction felt like a negotiation I was going to lose. Guilty because she always found a way to make me feel like I was doing something wrong. The therapist nodded, like that told her everything she needed to know. She said those feelings shouldn't be the foundation of a healthy relationship. She asked if I felt that way around anyone else in my life. I said no. She asked what that might mean. I said I didn't know, but I was starting to figure it out. I spent the next few weeks avoiding Gemma's calls and texts. She tried everything from sweet messages about how much she missed me to angry rants about how I was being unreasonable. I didn't respond to any of them. My therapist said I needed to focus on myself for a while, figure out what I actually wanted instead of just reacting to what Gemma wanted. So that's what I did. I started eating meals at normal times, choosing what I wanted to eat based on what sounded good instead of what would make someone else happy. I stopped feeling guilty every time I threw away leftovers. I lost 3 pounds in the first 2 weeks just from not forcing myself to finish mountains of food I didn't want. 5 weeks after the seafood buffet confrontation, someone knocked on my apartment door around 7 on a Tuesday night. I looked through the peephole and saw Gemma standing there holding a huge bouquet of flowers and several bags of takeout. My stomach dropped. I considered not answering, but she knocked again and called out that she could see my shadow through the peephole. I opened the door but didn't invite her in. She smiled like nothing was wrong and held up the flowers. She said she wanted to prove she could think about what I wanted for once. She'd brought food from my favorite Thai place, the one I'd mentioned wanting to try months ago, but we never went because she only wanted buffets. I looked at the takeout bags. There had to be at least 4 entrees in there, maybe more. She pushed past me into the apartment and started unpacking everything on my coffee table. Pad Thai, green curry, drunken noodles, spring rolls, tom yum soup, mango sticky rice. Enough food to feed a family. She sat down on my couch and patted the cushion next to her. She said she'd been thinking about what I said and she understood now. She wanted us to start fresh. I sat down but kept some distance between us. We ate in silence for a few minutes. The food was good, exactly what I would have ordered. But I noticed she'd only gotten one set of utensils. I took a few bites of the pad thai and some spring rolls. When I pushed the containers away and said I was full, her face changed. She slid the green curry toward me and said I should at least try it since she got it special for me. I said I was full and didn't want any more. She laughed and said, "Come on, there's so much food here, we can't let it go to waste." The same exact words she'd used at every buffet for 2 years. I looked at her and realized this wasn't about proving she could think of me. This was her doing the exact same thing with different packaging. She'd just moved the buffet to my apartment. I told her I needed her to leave. She looked shocked and asked why I was being like this when she'd gone to all this trouble. I said because she brought enough food for 4 people and was trying to guilt me into eating it all. She got defensive and said she just wanted to make sure there were options, that she was trying to be thoughtful. I stood up and walked to the door. I opened it and waited. She sat there for a minute staring at me like I was going to change my mind. Then she grabbed her purse and stormed out without taking any of the food. The next morning I called her and told her we needed to talk seriously about our relationship. She said she was listening. I said I needed space to figure out what I wanted, and that meant no contact for at least 2 weeks. She was quiet for a second, then she started begging me not to do this. She said we could work it out, that she'd do better, that she understood now what the problem was. I stayed firm and said 2 weeks, no exceptions. Her voice changed from pleading to angry. She said I was being dramatic over nothing. She said I was throwing away 2 years over stupid food issues. I repeated that I needed 2 weeks of space. She said, "Fine, take your space," but I was going to regret throwing away what we had. Then she hung up on me. I felt relieved instead of guilty. That told me everything I needed to know. The first week was hard. Gemma texted me constantly despite agreeing to give me space. The messages started sweet. She sent pictures of us from better times with captions about missing me. She sent long paragraphs about how much she loved me and how we were meant to be together. When I didn't respond, the messages turned angry. She said I was cruel for ignoring her. She said I was punishing her for trying to show love the only way she knew how. She said her parents had messed her up and I was supposed to help her heal, not abandon her. On day 6, she sent a message that was 3 paragraphs long blaming my friend for poisoning me against her. She said I'd been fine until I started listening to people who didn't understand our relationship. She said my sudden personality change proved someone was manipulating me. I read that message twice, then blocked her number. The silence that followed felt incredible. My apartment felt peaceful for the first time in months. I could eat dinner without dreading a guilt trip. I could make plans for the weekend without factoring in a buffet marathon. I could just exist without constantly managing someone else's emotions. The 2 weeks stretched into 3, then 4. I kept telling myself I needed more time, but really I just felt better than I had in years. I was eating normal portions at normal times. I'd lost 8 pounds without trying. My clothes fit better. I wasn't spending every Saturday and Sunday stuffing myself sick. My apartment felt like mine again instead of a place where I lived with constant guilt. I went to movies I wanted to see. I visited my sister without Gemma complaining about how long I spent with my family. I read books and played video games and did all the things I'd stopped doing because Gemma always needed my attention. One night I realized I hadn't thought about her all day. That had never happened in 2 years. I'd always been thinking about what she wanted or needed or expected from me. The freedom was amazing. 2 months after the breaking point at the seafood buffet, I joined a gym. Gemma had always discouraged me from working out. Every time I mentioned wanting to get healthier, she'd say I was fine the way I was. She'd say she liked my body and I shouldn't change it. She'd say gym memberships were a waste of money. Looking back, I realized she didn't want me to improve myself because that might mean I'd stop depending on her approval. I started going 3 times a week. Nothing crazy, just some cardio and basic weight training. I was down 15 pounds and feeling stronger. I could climb stairs without getting winded. My back didn't hurt all the time. One of the trainers came up to me after a workout and said I seemed really motivated compared to most new members. I thought about it and realized it was because nobody was sabotaging my efforts anymore. Nobody was pushing food at me and making me feel guilty for saying no. Nobody was telling me I was fine the way I was while secretly keeping me unhealthy. For the first time in years, I was making progress towards something I wanted instead of just trying to keep someone else happy. 3 months after I blocked Gemma's number, a mutual friend reached out. She said Gemma had asked her to contact me because Gemma wanted to apologize properly. She said Gemma had been doing a lot of thinking and understood now what she'd done wrong. The friend said Gemma just wanted a chance to talk, nothing more. I thought about saying no. Part of me wanted to just move on and never see Gemma again, but another part wanted to hear what she had to say, maybe get some closure. I agreed to meet for coffee at a place near my apartment. Gemma showed up 10 minutes early. She looked different, thinner maybe, or just tired. She had a whole speech prepared. She said she'd been seeing a therapist who helped her understand her control issues. She said she realized she'd been treating me like an extension of herself instead of a separate person. She said she was sorry for all the times she'd made me feel guilty or dismissed my feelings. It sounded good. It sounded like real growth. But then I didn't immediately say we should get back together and her whole demeanor changed. She got this tight expression and said she knew the apology wouldn't be good enough for me. She said she'd been working so hard on herself and I couldn't even acknowledge it. She said I'd already made up my mind to end things and this meeting was just me being cruel. I stayed calm and said I appreciated her apology, but I needed more time to think. She grabbed her purse and stood up. She said she was done trying to prove herself to someone who would never forgive her anyway. Then she left. I sat there finishing my coffee and realized nothing had actually changed. She'd learned to say the right words, but underneath she was still the same person who couldn't handle not getting what she wanted. After that meeting, everything became clear. I'd spent 2 years in a relationship where I didn't exist as a separate person with my own needs and wants. I existed to make Gemma happy, to finish her food, to accommodate her preferences, to manage her emotions. She wasn't capable of seeing me as anything else. The relationship had never been a real partnership. It had been me slowly disappearing while she took up all the space. I went home and threw away her number completely, not just blocked, but deleted. I removed her from all my social media. I packed up the few things she'd left at my apartment and dropped them at her building's front desk. I was done. 3 months after the seafood buffet, I had a checkup with my doctor. She did the usual measurements and noticed I'd lost 20 pounds since my last visit. She asked what I'd changed. I explained the whole situation with Gemma and the buffets and finally standing up for myself. My doctor was quiet for a minute. Then she said she was glad I got out of that situation. She said relationships where one person's needs consistently override the other person's needs aren't healthy, and the physical symptoms I'd been experiencing were my body's way of telling me something was wrong. Hearing a medical professional validate my decision helped more than I expected. I'd spent so long wondering if I was overreacting or being too sensitive. Having someone with actual training say I'd made the right choice made me feel less crazy. A woman at the gym asked me out for coffee a week later. She was friendly, always said hi when we were both there, and we'd talked a few times about workout routines. My immediate reaction was panic. What would she expect from me? What if she had weird food issues too? What if I ended up in the same situation again? But then I stopped and thought about it. I could just be honest about my preferences and boundaries. If she didn't respect them, I could walk away. The fact that this felt like a revolutionary concept showed me how warped my normal had become. I said yes to the coffee. We met on Saturday and just talked. She asked what I liked to do for fun. I told her honestly. She shared what she liked. When the check came, we split it without any drama. She didn't order extra and expect me to finish it. She didn't guilt me about my choices. It was just 2 people having a normal conversation. It felt so easy compared to what I'd been dealing with for 2 years. 4 months after standing up to Gemma at that buffet, I ran into her at the grocery store. I was in the produce section picking out vegetables when I saw her near the front with a guy I didn't recognize. He was pushing a cart that was absolutely overflowing with groceries while she walked ahead on her phone. She didn't see me. I watched them for a minute. The guy looked tired, kind of defeated, like he was already worn down. I felt a flash of pity for him. He had no idea what he was getting into, but mostly I felt grateful. Grateful that wasn't me anymore. Grateful I'd finally learned that someone who really cares about you doesn't need you to sacrifice your health and happiness to prove your love. Real love doesn't come with guilt trips and manipulation. Real love doesn't require you to eat yourself sick every weekend. I grabbed my vegetables and went to checkout. I didn't look back. I'm not perfect at boundaries yet. Last Thursday, I caught myself starting to explain to a cashier why I was only buying 3 items instead of a full cart, like I needed to justify my choices to a stranger. I stopped mid-sentence and just paid. The cashier didn't care. Nobody cared. That realization keeps hitting me in small moments. 2 weeks ago, the woman from the gym, Sarah, suggested getting dinner. I picked an Italian place I'd been wanting to try. Ordered chicken piccata without checking if she approved. She ordered her own meal and ate it. We split the check. No drama, no guilt trips. No one pushed food across the table. When she asked if I wanted to share dessert, I said no thanks and meant it. She ordered one for herself and didn't make it weird. Life isn't dramatically different on the surface. I still go to work, hit the gym, see my friends. But it feels different. Feels like mine. I'm making decisions based on what I actually want instead of what will cause the least conflict. Some days I still catch that old instinct to shrink myself down, to accommodate, to apologize for existing. But now I recognize it. Now I can stop and choose differently.